But my political awakening came in college. I was an undergraduate in 1961, started in 1961, ended in 1965. So it coincided with the more militant phase of the civil rights movement. And in my first and second year, that was the consuming interest on our campus. I was at Rutgers. It was a very active campus. Civil rights was the main call. In '63, I joined SDS, which was the left student group, premised on a kind of decentralized socialism. We had a small chapter of maybe 10 or 15 students, most of us history majors, probably some political scientists. And then when the war escalated in 1964, 1965, everything really changed. It changed the discussion on the left, it changed what people did on the left, it changed what it meant to be on the left. The war overwhelmed everything else. The war, in conjunction with the draft, took a very small movement of, who knows, maybe a couple of thousand students across the nation, and just magnified it. So SDS grew, auxiliary student groups grew, and the counterculture took shape. The counterculture sort of allied with political activism, and before you know it, by 1967 and 68, there's a fairly substantial student movement, and I bridged that period. I was also active in graduate school, mostly anti-war stuff. 68, 69, I was finishing my doctoral dissertation. I sort of had it with the peace movement. It fragmented very badly. There were sectarian groups that had taken over different aspects of it. Suspicion of the state, not of politics, and belief in reform are two lessons I carry from the 60s. 72, Richard Nixon was running for re-election in 72. One of the first things we did when I got here is we organized a group and went down to Westover area, and a bunch of us got arrested, including the president, William Ward, and he lost a job over it. The trustees did not like that, and he was basically purged. People forget that, but it was a pretty gutsy thing for him to do. That was no great moment. But that's the first thing I did when I got here. I opposed the war from the beginning. I thought invading Afghanistan was probably a good idea, since that seemed to be where the trouble originated. The Iraq War never made any sense to me from the first. It makes even less sense now. It's really set this country back. You people are going to wind up paying for it because it's been a fiscal disaster. It's been a political nightmare. After 9/11, the world was very sympathetic. Even the French said, well, we're all Americans now, because everybody identified with us. And those days are over. We're isolated, probably weaker than we've ever been, because we have no allies or people who trust us, with a handful of exceptions. What I'm really surprised at, even though I probably shouldn't be, is the lack of mobilization against the war. I mean, this generation of students I find really puzzling. Really puzzling. I suppose one answer for the relative quiescence is that there's no draft. That if the draft were instituted, people would be a lot more upset. But I'm sort of discouraged by the lack of student engagement on this issue. People don't seem to realize what it means to fight a war and keep it off the budget, to spend billions and billions and billions of dollars off the budget, not to be taxed for it. The American people bought the idea that Iraq had something to do with our security. Partly because the president, and especially the vice president, sold that idea so strongly. And they also appealed to heartfelt interests like Israel. I mean, most Americans felt that Iraq was a threat to Israel. Why is beyond me. Iran may be, but that's not clear. But people bought that stuff. They were intimidated. The press went along. The press went along with the Vietnam War, and after the Vietnam War there was a feeling, well, that'll never happen again. And it did. It did. At least the press by 1968 had basically turned against the war. That didn't happen this time. It took a long time for people to get religion on this war.